Hello, this is Crane, and this is an introductory video to the Forge Fast Expand into +1/+1 timing in the Protoss versus Zerg matchup in Starcraft Brood War. Just to preface this, PvZ builds change a lot depending on what the Zerg opponent is doing in the opening and in the early game. So for this, I'm going to assume that my Zerg opponent is doing an overpool into 3-hatch Spire, 5-hatch Hydra, because that's a pretty typical opening and a good baseline. So our goal with this build is to take our natural expansion as fast as safely possible, and then we're going to do a timing at 7 minutes and 30 seconds with 7 or 8 Zealots with +1 ground weapons, Zealot legs, and then shortly thereafter, we're going to have 5 Corsairs with +1 air weapons hit the Zerg. So that's our goal. So to set that all up, the first thing we do is to put a pylon at our natural at 8 supply. And to do that, we're going to take our 6th probe and send him to mine once. When he returns his minerals, we're going to send him to the natural. If you do this, you will always have your pylon down at exactly 8 supply and 100 minerals, right on time. So he's going to be here exactly at 100 minerals. So it's a nice clean timing you can remember. This probe is going to go scout right now. It's extremely important to scout in PvZ. That's why we scout right after pylon. This probe is going to micro against the Lings and try to stay alive in the Zerg base as long as you possibly can. It's super important to see what the Zerg is doing in order to react. The next part of our build is our Forge. Our 10th probe is going to be rallied to the natural directly to make it. We are not making our Forge at exactly 150 minerals because we don't need to, and we can squeeze out a little bit more mining. So this 10th probe is going to come and put down our Forge and head right back to the main. You're safe against anything the Zerg can do with a Forge built this way, so you don't have to worry about getting it super early. The next part of our build is putting down our Nexus on 13. So there's actually going to be a pretty significant probe cut, and this is specific to the overpool matchup. So at 250 minerals, we send a probe to the natural to make our Nexus. And if we do that right on time, we should have our minerals exactly on time to make our Nexus. And then on 13, remember we're halting probes, we're going to make a cannon. Something optional you can do, which I like to do, is after the Nexus, you can mine once at the natural, make your cannon on 13, and send your probe home to return minerals. We're going to queue up 2 probes to get up to 15 supply. And then this probe is going to go back to our natural to make our gateway on 15. And that should match just perfectly. So 150 minerals goes down. We're going to send this probe back home to make our pylon on 16, and that timing should also be perfect. 100 minerals, there's our pylon. So to review really quick, Nexus on 13, cannon on 13, gateway on 15, and then pylon on 16. Okay. The next part of the build is going to be a gas on 17. And then we're going to make our core on 18. To do that, we're going to take our 17th probe and rally it to our core. And right when that 17th probe pops, you can transfer 4 probes to your natural, because that's going to be perfect timing for our Nexus to finish. Start your core right on time. And from here, we're going to make constant probes as much as we can. After that core goes down, we're going to send 3 probes to our main gas and start mining gas, and then start our Zealot. Okay. Next thing in the build is our Stargate. So in the meantime, we're going to make constant probes. We're going to make a second Zealot, and we're going to constantly micro this probe to see what the Zerg is doing. Our core is going to finish right when we have 150 gas, which is another nice clean timing in this build. So there it is, right there. We're going to make one more round of probes, and then we're going to start our natural gas on 30. There's going to be a slight probe cut here in order to get pylon up. So our pylon's going to go down on 30. And then we're going to start our +1 ground weapons. And a zealot. Our third zealot, that is. And then we can resume probes. After that, our natural gas is going to finish. So we're going to get ready to send 3 probes to the natural gas. Right now. And right now, you can see I have exactly 7 probes mining minerals, and there's 7 mineral patches in our natural, which means we have good efficiency here. In order to do that, we had our first 4 probes that we sent in our initial transfer. In our main, we got up to 10 probes on minerals, and obviously our 3 on gas. And then we rallied probes from our main to our natural in order to get this saturation up to where it needs to be. So if you rally 2 probes after having 10 on your main minerals to your natural, then you'll have perfect saturation right when your gas finishes. It's a nice little timing there. If you're new, don't worry about that. That's a small optimization. But when you're really getting better at the build, it's one of those things that can bring your build to the next level. So from here, we want to get our +1 air weapons. I missed this on this replay, but in reality we should be making air weapons right now. I made my SAIR and then my air weapons, which is a slight misoptimization, but that's okay. On 40 supply we make a pylon, and from here the build is it's not as tightly controlled to supply. Your build changes a lot based on the Zerg, like I said before. It depends on if your probe died, it depends on if you had to make a second cannon. There's a lot of variables in the build that change exactly what supplies things happen. So I'm not going to go by exact supplies anymore. Instead, I'm going to just talk about general rules and some highlights. So from here, your number 1 priority is to make constant Corsairs. Your second priority is to make tech. So when we had that next 100 gas on 42 supply, we put down our Citadel. Next priority is probes. And then our last priority is zealots. And that's going to be true all the way up until the 7:30 timing. So again, you want to make constant Corsairs, you want to make tech, probes, and then zealots. And then of course you need to make exactly enough pylons to support all that, and no more. You don't want to make excess pylons because the minerals in this build are very tight. So we're going to constantly make these Corsairs, and our first one is going to go straight to the Zerg base to scout. Somewhere between 46 and 50 supply, we're going to add our second gateway. In this rep I make it at 50, or sorry, at 46. This Corsair, it's very important to scout the Zerg first. Don't worry about overlords until you see what the Zerg is doing and react accordingly. One critical timing that you should remember is when you put your core down, your probe should see the layer start at pretty much the same time. If they're the same time, this Corsair can scout the Zerg, kill 1 overlord, and then come home and be safe and not die to Scourge. If your core is a little early, then you can kill more overlords. If your core is late, then you probably have to scout and get right back home. So that's just a general rules. Core should line up with the layer. When our Citadel finishes, we're going to immediately get legs, and again, constantly make Corsairs. The next part of this build is going to be our Templar Archives. That's going to go down at the latest 6 minutes and 30 seconds. that's important timing so that we get our High Templar started right on time and be safe against any counterattacks of 4-hatch Hydra or 5-hatch Hydra. So right at 6:30 we're going to start Archives. And the next thing that you'll note is right after 7 minutes I'm going to have 8 Zealots finished. +1 weapons will be almost done. Legs is also going to be almost done, and I'm going to move out. You want to hit the Zerg Natural at 7:30. You don't want to move out at 7:30. If you move out at 7:30, you're late. So notice I have 8 Zealots. It's 7 minutes and 5 seconds. +1's almost done. Legs is almost done, and I move out. My Archives finishes, and I can start my 2 Templar right when I finish these 7 or 8 Zealots. I'm going to start my Storm, and I'm going to add 2 Gateways to go up to 4. 7:30, my Zealots hit the Natural. I cannot stress enough how important it is to hit at 7:30 and to not be late with this timing. At 7:30, the Zerg should just have enough Hydras to defend. At 8 minutes, they could have another dozen Hydras defending. The difference in the Zerg's defense is huge in those 30 seconds. So hitting this timing is critical. Right when these Zealots hit, our 5 Corsairs will be finished. And notice how I trapped a probe behind my minerals. This lets your Corsairs clump up, kind of like Mutamicro. When they group 11 mutas with a Overlord, they clump and they're more microable. I highly recommend that. But at 7:30, we're going to move out with these 5 Corsairs because our +1's just about to finish. 5 Corsairs with +1 can fight small groups of Scourge. So that's the reason we wait for 5 before going out again. And that's the timing. So our Zealots are going to be fighting, our Corsairs are going to come in and start eating all of their Overlords, and the goal is to put Zerg as far behind as possible with this strong timing. From here, there's really 2 things to think about. One is when to take a third. Generally, you will take a third either off of 6 gates or off of 8 gates. As a newer player, I highly recommend doing it off of 8 because it makes it quite simple. You just get 8 gates, you have a nice strong push at 12-ish minutes, and then you take an expansion behind it. Makes it quite easy. The other thing you're gearing up for is a +2 weapons push, which is the way you do that is you're going to get your first 2 Templar, you're going to get your Storm. After that, you're going to start +2 weapons or +1 armor, depending on your style and what the Zerg is doing. You're going to make 2 to 4 more Templar to go up to a total of 4 to 6 Templar. You're going to get a robotics facility. Then you're going to start your Dragoon range, get an observatory, and then pump goons. All of that is to hit the Zerg at about 12 minutes with 1 to 2 control groups of goons, 4 to 6 Templar, observers, and a bunch of Zealots. That's a very strong mid-game timing that I highly recommend. That's why I think going 8 gate at this point is really nice because you'll get more Zealots out of it. And honestly, you can quite often just kill your Zerg opponent with that timing. Anyway, so that's the build. That's Forge Fast Expand into a +1/+1 timing in PvZ, and good luck.